Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kylie Larson, your guest host for this evening's edition of Higher Ed Live, the weekly web show for marketing web professionals. Tune into Higher Ed Live on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on higheredlive.com and join in the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag HigherEdLive. You can follow me personally at Kylie S. Larson, and you can follow our guest tonight at Mike Drish. I'm a former admissions counselor and former college counselor who now works for mStoner as the quality assurance manager. And tonight's show is all about the question, should I climb the ladder or jump the desk? Advice for early to mid-career higher ed professionals. My guests tonight have a lot of experience in this, and so I'm excited to see what their personal path was and some of the best advice they've received. Before I introduce tonight's guests, I'd like to give a few shout-outs to our sponsors. OmniUpdate is the leading web content management system provider for higher education. The company's web CMS, OU Campus, is secure and scalable with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community. Check out the new OmniUpdate study on how Wharton County JC achieves editorial freedom and consistency with its faculty directory. Higher Ed Live is sponsored by Uversity, formerly Integral, the creators of the school app, a private Facebook community to boost enrollment and retention. Check out their blog, Uversity Roundtable, for posts on admissions, marketing, student engagement, and social media in higher education. We're tweeting the link to the blog now. Now, to the content for tonight. I want to have each of our guests introduce themselves and talk about kind of where they are professionally right now and a brief history of how they got there. So we'll start with Meredith. Meredith, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kylie. Hi, my name is Meredith Britt. I am currently the Associate Director of College Counseling at New Community Jewish High School located in Los Angeles. My past life, the past 5 years, I worked in admissions at a couple different universities, having different roles, spending time on the road, reading files, and so forth, and just recently this summer made the jump to the other side of the desk, joining college counseling.
Great. Well, thanks for joining tonight.
Thank you.
Mike.
And hi, everyone. My name is Mike Drish. I am the Director of Admissions, Recruitment, and Outreach at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I'm about 5, almost 6 months into the role. So prior to that, similar to Meredith, I have worked at a number of universities, both public and private, throughout the U.S., actually. So a number of different perspectives to bring to the story. And I've been in higher ed admissions for about now almost 12 years.
A true veteran.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
So my first question is about how did you fall into higher ed? I feel as if so many professionals fell into it by accident through campus jobs or something of the sort. So Mike, how did you fall into the higher ed profession?
That's pretty much how it happened. I actually went to the University of Illinois as an undergrad, and in that role I applied to and was selected to be a tour guide, and really didn't think much of it other than I loved the university and thought it'd be a lot of fun to get paid to walk people around campus telling them how great it is. And when I was a senior, I was asked, I applied for and was able to be an undergrad intern in the office, and I got some exposure to what admissions was beyond just kind of the tour guide perspective, and I really liked it. And I was a history major, so I really wasn't sure what I was going to do with that. So I hadn't thought through that beyond like maybe grad school. And I really loved the internship, loved working in the admissions office at Illinois. So I thought, why not, this is the chance to kind of see what it's all about. And I had a great boss in the office at that time, and she was really encouraging. And so there weren't any openings at Illinois, but I looked kind of throughout the Midwest and the East Coast and applied for a number of jobs. And luckily, one Big Ten school was hiring, and that was Purdue. And so I interviewed.
So you started as a rival.
I did. That's the thing. As long as it wasn't anyone out there from the University of Iowa, I apologize. But that's the big rival, so you can't work there out of Illinois. But Purdue was a friendly rival, so we were okay with that.
So you
And
started
so I
at
started,
Illinois, went away for 12 years, and came back.
exactly. I actually came back to Champaign-Urbana, so which is probably something people might go, what? But it's been a pretty good full circle route.
Meredith, how did you fall into higher ed?
Yeah, so I was actually an elementary education major in college. I knew I loved working with kids. I thought I wanted to be a teacher. And then towards the end of college, I realized that that wasn't my career path for right then. And I'd heard about a master's program in higher education. I thought, well, I'm enjoying my college experience, and I'm passionate about education. Let me find out what this higher ed thing is all about. And so initially, I actually went into it thinking I really wanted to work in student affairs. I'd been involved in different organizations on campus, and I thought, oh, how great would it be to be a student affairs director and work with students and feel that connection to a campus. But as I kind of started my program and had internships in areas outside of student affairs, I discovered things like admissions and development, and my eyes just really opened once I saw all the different things that were out there, and that I could continue to work with students, a diverse type group of students, and kind of share my passion for education.
Great. You know, I was very similar. I was on campus as an English major saying, I have no idea what I want to do, but I don't want to leave college.
Right.
And my housing director said, well, I have a career for you.
Liberal arts majors make the best admissions officers.
You know, we're very well rounded.
It's true. Very true.
What other type of personality traits do you think are attracted to higher education? Meredith?
Sure. In my experience, at least a lot of people I've come across in higher education, it tends to be people who are fairly outgoing, people who like to talk, but I think a common trait I've seen is people who want to help in one way or another. If they want to help students have a great college experience, if they want to help students navigate the admissions process, the financial piece of it, it's people who are passionate about education, who really see the value in going to college and that whole experience and that student development, and just people who are interested in working with others. So that's kind of been what I've seen commonalities between other people in the field.
Mike, what other traits do you see?
Yeah, I would say Meredith hit it right on the head there. It's really, you have to be outgoing. I think that you don't really maybe know it at the time, but it's that interest in counseling, and I think it's kind of on that broader scale. It's really helping. You're interested in helping people, helping them maneuver a process, assisting them. I think that you just have to kind of have that outlook, because especially in your entry-level positions, and I think that's kind of why a lot of tour guides fall into the role, is because you are doing that. You're passionate about something. In this case, I think it's higher ed or the university that you attended, and then it's also that interest in really helping and making a difference. So I think it's people who aren't always either happy with the status quo either and want to go in and actually help those students who might not be thinking about college, excite them about it, to help those who don't have all the resources, to help them look at it as an option. So I think it's kind of that drive to make a difference.
Now, Meredith, your first job wasn't with your alma mater, was that right?
That's correct, yeah.
And neither was Mike. So I feel like, and sometimes that's kind of rare. A lot of people end up working for their alma mater right away. So how was it in your first job not working for your alma mater? Was it weird? Because, I feel like when you go to a new institution, it opens your mind like, wow, there's so many other ways to do these 5 things or whatever.
Yeah, for me it was really interesting. I worked at a very different type of school than the one that I attended or others that I had internships at. So it was a really interesting learning curve to kind of see the different types of students that institution was serving, and also at the same time myself learning what type of institution I'm working for and how to best represent it and share what's great about that specific college with students. So it was kind of interesting, and it was hard at first to sort of leave my college experience behind and not let that kind of affect how I was talking with these students, what my expectations were for them. So it was interesting to kind of get outside of my bubble and my comfort zone and learn something totally different and how to best represent it to students.
Yeah. Mike, you've had a similar experience working for colleges that are really large or much smaller, private and public. How has it been for you mentally to transition from different universities, maybe even ones that you don't have an immediate personal connection to?
Yeah, I think looking back, one of the best things that could have happened was that I didn't get a job as a recent grad at Illinois because I think that it really helped me to understand, it's a similar type of university Purdue was, but it was a whole different place. I think that was a great benefit because I couldn't rely on my experience. And I do think in some ways that every place I've worked, including the University of Illinois I work at now, is very different from the university I attended as a student. And I actually think the less you rely on your experience and talk more about the university, because most students might want to hear a few anecdotes, but they're not really as interested about your particular story. Especially after even a couple years, you are ancient history, it seems like. So I very rarely reference even that I'm a University of Illinois alum as one of the lead-ins when I talk to students because it just doesn't have the relevance to what they're interested in now versus over a decade ago. But I think the key thing is like what Meredith said, it's just getting to know the university. One of the benefits is that you should be excited or passionate about the place you're working, no matter what it is. And as long as you are, you're going to want to learn about it, you're going to immerse yourself in it, and students and parents know from the minute they start talking to you whether or not you're excited to be there. And so I've had the great fortune of working at some places that it's pretty easy to get excited about.
Just to jump on that, I completely agree with what Mike's saying. When you're passionate about an institution, it makes your job a lot easier, and it shows how when you're genuine and sincere and that passion just comes through to students and parents. They pick up on it right away, and it gets them excited as well.
So true. I've had that experience as well. When I almost get so excited I'm talking too fast and am not really, making sense, but people are picking up on the energy. So at least that's
right.
That's a good part.
That's right. If they aren't listening to everything you're saying, they'll remember she was excited.
Yeah,
that
really
to be
happy.
A good place.
Yeah. I feel like when I talk to people who are considering the career path, though, a lot of the things that are easier to talk about are extroverted traits. Things about being a helper, being a talker, being really excitable, being in large crowds. But there are actually a lot of introverts in higher ed. How have you dealt with any introverted parts of your personality, or have you worked with introverted coworkers, and how does that make higher ed better, or how does that impact the profession? Meredith, you want to start?
Sure, yeah. So I consider myself an extrovert, but I quickly realized working in admission offices that I'm not the most outgoing or loud or extroverted person out there, and that's totally fine. But I think that having a quieter side or more reserved side it's helped me in some ways. In a previous job, I think it helped me sort of stay out of some of the gossip and the drama that tends to happen naturally in a lot of big offices, and especially offices where people are very social and outgoing and have big personalities. So in that sense, I think it helped me kind of stay out of things and kind of keep my head above water and not get drawn into some of those intricacies of an office environment. But on the same token, I think that at times not being as outspoken as some of my colleagues has potentially held me back in terms of not always advocating for myself or tooting my own horn, and I think that may have impacted me a little bit as well. So there's pros and cons, I think, to being very outgoing or being very introverted, whichever it is. And I think it's just kind of managing that and seeing where your personality, where your strengths are, and really playing those up, and being aware of your weaknesses and maybe areas you can work on.
Yeah. Mike, how have you seen introversion help in the field or impact the field?
I think that, what we kind of described as some of the personality traits are a small portion of the job, a very important portion of the job when you're out at schools and at fairs and programs and things like that. But the vast majority of the job is a lot of, it's data focused, it's reading applications, it's the details to make all of that happen. And I believe that's where especially an introverted person has a lot of success, and a lot of extroverted people have to kind of learn, just like you kind of do when you go to college and you learn how to study all over again. You kind of have to learn how to balance all of that, because if you aren't concerned with the data, if you're not looking at the details, if you're not taking the time to understand your school and the applicants from that group and advocating on their behalf, all of that energy and excitement is not going to actually turn into any results or a positive end result for your territory, the kids, the students that you're really interested in, the relationships you've built with counselors. So I think that that's where introverted tendencies, the detail, the kind of looking at the data and focused on that, I think it keeps it pretty balanced.
Yeah. I'm an introvert myself, and I remember interviewing for my first admissions job, and I almost thought I couldn't take it because everybody there seemed so extroverted. And one of the current officers at the time said, think about how many hours you're going to spend in a car, on a plane, on a train by yourself.
Yep.
And, you're going to have that time to recoup. And I think it's the same for advancement officers and maybe people who are planning reunions. There's a lot of alone time that doesn't get the attention.
Yep, and I think that that's the key thing is we're all pretty extroverted in social group settings like conferences and college fairs. And what a lot of people don't realize is, then you have to go back to, maybe grab dinner quickly and back to the hotel, and then you're on a flight early in the morning. You're, maneuvering the rental car all day by yourself. So I think we strike that balance. You're right, but we can come across as all extroverted, but I agree. We're not all that way all the time.
Very true.
Totally true. So I want to transition to kind of some admission-specific questions, since I think that's where a lot of our backgrounds are. One of the things I was thinking as I was preparing for the show and I was thinking about those questions was all of the sticky questions we get asked as admissions people, college counseling people who work with admissions offices. There's a lot of press about admissions right now. It's the in vogue thing to talk about. There's a movie about it, and there's the New York Times.
Yeah, I blame TSA.
Yeah. How do you handle those situations where you're peppered by family or friends with those tough questions about affirmative action, or a kid that they personally know that didn't get in, or the cost of college? How do you handle those sticky questions?
I think the toughest part is just, like you said, with family or friends or anyone who walks up to you at a table or an event, is we live and breathe it every day. So we're reading the Chronicle, we're reading Inside Higher Ed, we're listening to podcasts and watching webcasts, and they are giving it a few minutes of attention probably in a day. So I think the biggest part of it is when I'm peppered with those tough questions, I really try and make it so that someone understands why we did something that they might not agree with. And I think usually they don't agree with it because they don't understand it, or they read the quick news clip or the headline, or they just know that something wasn't fair. And it's that notion of fairness, I think, in admissions that gets a lot of attention in helping people understand how we make decisions. And like you said, kind of why we practice affirmative action, why we value that, why diversity is a term that we don't shy away from. I think because you're right, a lot of people aren't exposed to it, and so they kind of see that quick headline, or some national news agency decides to talk about it, and suddenly we have a lot of questions.
Yeah. Meredith, I know when I was in admissions, sometimes you get the more pointed questions because they're very amped up. But then when you go to college counseling, you can get away from them less because those families come back every day. In admissions, you might see it at the college fair, and then you never see that person again. But college counseling, they're coming back into your office. How do you handle that in a very personal situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different because I am seeing them fairly often. I am in contact with them by email or phone, and pretty regularly. So you can have. You've developed a rapport, and you can have sometimes a more honest conversation. And I'm still coming to those conversations from my experience on the college side of, well, let me try to kind of explain what was going on here, or what I think was happening, and try to clear up any misconceptions. I feel like my job a lot of times is just to inform and just to kind of clear the air and help them understand why the process is the way it is and how it works, and just so they have a better grasp of what's going on behind the scenes. Sometimes it's a little bit easier when I know where the students or where the parents are coming from and kind of what they're getting at, and I can try to relay to them and hopefully calm them a little bit if they're worked up, confused, upset, whatever it is. But I think I can have those honest conversations with them in my role. And you're right, I can't get away from it, so I might as well, address it and be as honest and upfront with the families as I can. I think that they respond well to that, and they respect that. When you take the time to explain to them and answer their question, they usually respond fairly well to that.
And I would
Awesome.
say, as someone on the admission side of it, one of the most valuable things that I find is when I walk into a school or before a school visit, actually talking to the college counselors and saying, so what's the issue, or what's kind of the concern this year? What have you been really focusing on, so that I can say that, because like you said, it's the 45 minutes there, but suddenly what I say, it's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. It's like Meredith's been there every day saying it.
Right.
So I
Right.
think that's pretty valuable, is when you
It's
can actually kind of align those talking points so that the concern or the stress maybe goes down a little bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sticking with kind of the state of admissions, I feel as if it's growing as a profession. It's growing in visibility. It's also growing in numbers. The admissions offices are larger. The college counseling
Mhm.
staffs are larger. Do you see that trend continuing? And if so, what sort of new roles might be in admissions offices or college counseling offices? Meredith, you want to start off?
Sure. Yeah, I do see the profession and the admission offices and college counseling offices growing to some extent. I just don't know if it'll be at quite as fast of a rate as I've seen it in the past few years. When I was thinking about this from the college side, a lot of colleges every year are trying to raise the amount of applications they get, and when they do significantly raise the number of applications, that takes additional people often, or additional time and resources to process those applications, to read those applications, and everything else that goes along with it. So I think we will see a continued increase in staffing and in roles in different offices, as long as that trend continues, that there's more applications year after year. On the college counseling side, one thing I'm realizing now, being on this side, is that it's very important to students and families that they have a small student to counselor ratio. They want to know that their students are going to be taken care of, that I'm going to know them and have a relationship with them as a student, and be able to advocate for them when it comes to the college piece. So if high school is growing, if a class is larger, that can be a concern. So it may be, you bring on a part-time or an additional college counselor to serve the needs of that growing class or that growing school. So it varies, but I do see it continuing to some
Continuing to
extent.
grow. Yeah. Mike, and I know you personally experienced a lot of the global travel too. Admissions offices are not only growing in domestic size, but their reach is extending. What have you seen so far?
Yeah, I agree with what Meredith said. I think that offices will continue to grow, probably not at the rate that they have over the past maybe 4 or 5 years, but I think in some ways it might not even be adding more counselors, but it will be adding different roles, like people who are data analysts, or more to the communications and marketing team, or kind of those types of roles, as opposed to just entry-level positions. I think that as we do see the increase in applications. I think where the focus is now, though, is much more on yielding students. In the race to get more and more applications, I think everyone didn't think about the fact that, well, as these students apply everywhere, suddenly now we're not going to have the sure admit or the sure enroll, and we have to fight a little bit more and make an effort to entice these students, and that takes people who understand yield trends, and you can look at the data and analyze it, and you need to look at ways to market. Nowadays, it can't just be an email or a brochure. And so I think you need those roles in the office. And I think that's the case overseas, because you can do a lot of, as the term goes, kind of armchair recruiting, where you might have virtual visits and things like that. But I still have found that nothing can replicate the opportunity to sit down and chat with a family in China or Turkey, or the UK. It's just not the same. And so I think having the staff to at least spend some time abroad, interacting and building those relationships, is going to be a need as we get further into the 21st century.
Agreed. You said something right at the front of your response that stuck out to me, and it was that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for different types of roles that aren't necessarily just a front-end admissions counselor. So a lot of communication roles. And I think that from my perspective in a partner firm, we are seeing a lot more admissions offices that have a communication specialist, or somebody who's a creative director in an admissions office, and they're in this really unique role that didn't seem to exist even 5 years ago.
Yeah. No, that's
really
exactly the case. Yeah, I feel like you used to be able to just kind of put all the facts out there and put some really nice pictures, and people might be like, okay, that's what everyone else is doing. This all seems pretty good. Now, with the opportunities online and just the way you can present a university through virtual tours now and things, that's something that you can't learn
Yeah.
overnight as something. You might have been able to put together a brochure, even if that wasn't your expertise, but to make a virtual tour or something like that, you really do need expertise.
Yeah. Meredith, I think you and I talked, gosh, it must have been 3 or 4 years ago now,
Yeah, it was.
about blogs, because all of a sudden it occurred to us that like the University of Virginia and Johns Hopkins had these really good blogs, and we should start doing this. And now there are really professional teams who manage blogs. They manage the photo content and the writing and manage student bloggers. That's a huge role in an office now.
Right, and I think however many years ago it was, I was just starting to convince my current institution that social media might be a valuable way to reach out to students and to share a different perspective. And since then, it has grown tremendously. I've seen colleges that they have Twitter accounts, Instagram accounts, Facebook pages, blogs, everything that you can imagine. Some colleges are using that to their advantage because they've realized that's where a lot of students are. That's where they're spending their time. But you're right, it does take some time. It takes an expert, someone who understands the value of social media, why they're doing it, and kind of what the purpose is. And I've seen a lot of those roles start to come up and grow and really take off. So it's an interesting thing. And even on the high school side, we just started a Facebook page for our high school college counseling office to try to reach our students in another format and promote college visits that are coming up or opportunities that they have and reminders. So it's a really interesting time, I think, with how big social media has become and how much it's infiltrated our day-to-day lives. And it takes people who know what they're doing to do social media effectively.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to transition a little bit and ask you about, how were you influenced into the current role? Did you have really great professional advice along your own career path? So Meredith, do you want to tell me kind of what was some of the best professional advice you've received to date, and how have you used that advice in your journey?
Yeah, I feel like I've been fortunate. I've received good advice over the years from different people, different sources. I think one major thing that I quickly realized was true was don't burn any bridges. Not that I would ever want to do that, but just it really conveyed to me that admissions and college counseling, it's a small world, and everyone knows each other, or everyone knows someone who knows you, and it's very interconnected. So I think keeping those relationships up, developing connections with people. You never know when you're going to cross paths down the road or run into somebody at a conference or at a whatever it may be. So I think just really realizing that it's the people of this job that really make it so fun and so wonderful and so worthwhile, and just keeping in mind that we're all interconnected and to keep those connections going and keep those relationships strong.
It is a very small world. When I left my first job and moved many, many states away, I was surprised at how often I still saw the same people. The profession, they may change roles, they may change kind of exactly where they're working or what they're doing, but they tend to stay in the field and you see them over and over. Mike, what was some of the best advice you received?
Yeah, I would say early on when I first started my job, I think there's a tendency, especially in admissions, people sometimes like to move around, or they like to, I think, try different jobs, and it's kind of the humor in the field that we talk about how people might leave after a year or something. You never know. And one of the best pieces of advice, which actually I think worked on me, was my boss at the first institution I worked at. Said, to really understand a university, the culture, the people, the mission, the values, you should work at that place for at least 3 years. And now, granted, I'm sure that she just wanted me to stick around for a little while, but it worked. And I feel that I have benefited professionally because of that, because I do feel like if you kind of you go on just first impressions, sometimes you you don't truly understand the university or even why things happen the way they happen or respect the way things happen. And I feel like I've been able to take that at the different universities I've worked at and really give things some time, try and understand, and that also helped me. I got some advice as well that you should really be true to what you value and kind of make sure that the personnel and the organization that you work for, that university, their goals align with what you're looking for professionally. And so too often people go on name recognition or they go on what seems like a great place to work, but they don't actually put some time and effort into thinking about, well, what will I truly be doing here? What does this university value? What do I value in higher ed? And will I be able to accomplish my goals here? And so early on, someone actually, when I went for my second job, that was kind of a great moment with a mentor to actually kind of think about that, because if I hadn't, I don't know if I would have made the right choice. So I think that was a good piece of advice.
Yeah, I think finding that right fit for your value system is hard to do, but important, because you're never going to agree with all the things a university does. I've definitely, been at an institution and been really, really upset about something they did. But the core of who they are needs to match, and that's hard to find, but it's really important in your career search. So I think, using mentors to help you along is important. Meredith,
exactly, because they've been through it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Meredith, have you passed along any advice? And what do you find when you're a mentor now, well into your career? What have you been asked a lot, and what have you been passing along as advice?
Yeah, I think in recent years I've been contacted by former colleagues of mine for different things. One common thing is people maybe interviewing for a promotion and looking for some advice, since I've interviewed at different places and I've had different roles, and trying to they've picked my brain about how to prepare for these things and how to best present themselves to their bosses and their managers. So I think promotions has been one I've talked about a lot. Another one more recently is some former colleagues who are still in college admissions who are considering college counseling, and they want to know, what is it really like? Is it, what's the most challenging thing? What's difficult? What do you not enjoy about it? What do you love about it? And just trying to understand kind of what my day-to-day is, and as they envision what it might be like for them to make that transition. So that's something that's just more recently, obviously, since I'm still new to this role. But people are curious about it. It's something that I know a lot of admission people consider at some point in their career. There's sometimes a fork in the road, I think, as to whether they want to continue to kind of go up in the ranks, or if they want to try something a little bit different.
Let me ask you two questions. The first is, I feel as if figuring out how to put yourself out there for a promotion or an opportunity is really, really difficult, especially early on in your career. Mm-hmm. And it's really easy to put yourself out there in a bad way, to become annoying or get noticed in a not good way. It's a delicate art. What have you said to people about that delicate art?
It is very delicate, and in my experience, it's really dependent on the environment I've worked in. So the office that I've worked in, the managers and the structure that's there. I've been fortunate that I've had opportunities where I had a good relationship with my boss, and I was able to talk with him and say, I really enjoy it here. I'm learning a lot, and I'm ready for more. I'd like to take on some more challenges. Here are maybe some ideas that I have of things or projects I'd like to start, such as the blog, for example. And it was sort of wasn't a loud way of advocating for myself, but I made it known that I'm working hard. I worked hard. I took on additional roles, and I let them know that I was ready for more and eager to learn more and push myself a little bit. And I think that helped. They knew that I was serious about this, that I was committed to the organization, and I was really committed to doing a great job and trying to enhance the office and the mission of the university. So something as simple as having that conversation with a boss, a manager, and seeing, is this realistic, and getting some feedback about what I could do to get to that next step and that next role in my career.
Yeah, that makes total sense, and it is a subtle way of putting yourself out there. The second thing I wanted to ask you was, you mentioned that fork in the road, and I think that was almost the crux of the title of the show is, how do you know when it's time to climb the ladder and really put yourself out there for a promotion in higher ed, or if you're ready to jump, whether that's to the other side of the desk in college counseling or to a vendor firm. How do you know when you're ready?
That's a great question. I feel like maybe you're never 100% sure, but for me, I had this nagging feeling and this nagging desire in the back of my mind for a couple of years now that college counseling seemed really interesting. It seemed like something I would really enjoy. For me personally, I was craving more interactions with students on a regular basis, not just the visit where you see them maybe once, or maybe you contact a student through email throughout the year. So once I really understood what my values were, what my goals were, the parts of higher ed and admissions I was really passionate about, that's sort of when I knew that I could continue in admissions, but I knew the further I went, it could potentially get further away from what my real goal was, and it was to work with students and to work with a diverse type of student. That was another thing I really craved, was to help the students who are going to community college, who are going to selective colleges, and everything in between, and being able to have those conversations rather than just representing one institution, which was great, but I felt like I could do more, and I wanted to do more personally.
Absolutely, I understand that. Mike, when you were kind of mid-career, maybe, a couple years in, how did you know that, or did you ever know that you were definitely going to climb the ranks at admissions, that you wanted to be in admissions long-term, and that you weren't going to consider moving elsewhere for now? Or have you not decided that? I mean, how have you made career decisions along the way?
I think that Meredith hit it in the sense that you don't maybe always know, but as you're going through the profession, you kind of reach these moments where you might suddenly realize, oh, I'm not spending as much time with students as I did early on, or I'm doing a lot of this, that, or the other, but I really like this. And I think that's the moment when you realize maybe it's time to take the next step, is when you go, this is different than what I started doing. It could be in that position, at that university, in that role. And if you go, and you know what, I like this, or I think this is a great direction to go in, I feel like that's when you're probably more inclined to stay in higher ed, in admissions. But I do feel like a lot of my peers who started around the same time I did, when they reach a point where everyone who's moved to the other side of the desk, I've heard the same thing. I missed the opportunity to interact with students on a daily or weekly basis. I value the answering emails and phone calls and the time I'm with the students the most. And then suddenly, because as you move up in the profession, it does get a little bit more focused on the work of admissions and enrollment, and less about the outreach, in the sense the direct outreach and direct connection to students and counselors. You're almost kind of shepherding that process along, and you have a lot of people doing all of that outreach for you, but you're managing the process and ensuring that all their hard work pays off through the review process, through interacting with the university administration to ensure they have bought into what you're doing. And there's just not enough time in the day to answer all of those emails and return all those calls and meet with all those families when they come in. And I think that's when you reach the moment where you go, do I want that, or do I want to be more involved with that wide variety of student and parent on a daily basis?
That makes a lot of sense. You're either attracted to the profession for the student and parent interactions, or the complexity of higher ed, maybe the whole administrator, the work of the university, more than just the student, and you kind of have to reach that point.
Yep, because I think one thing that a lot of people at senior levels in higher ed have in common is they've all at some point worked with students on a fairly daily or weekly basis. But I think they see the value from their perspective in being able to impact and make a difference for a even larger group of students at the university, even if they don't get to interact with them every day to see how it's going. I feel that's still a value that a lot of people, senior administrators, seem to have.
Mike, I also want to ask you what I had asked Meredith about, which is that the subtle art of promoting yourself and putting yourself out there for new opportunities. I know because one of the reasons I thought that you would be a great person on this show is I've seen a lot of different people come to you over the years and ask you for that advice, because I feel like you have such great relationships with bosses that you've even left. You know, it doesn't seem like you've burned a lot of bridges. You've had a good job of like moving on when it was right and moving up at the right time. So how did you learn to promote yourself? What advice would you give to an earlier or mid-career professional about saying to your boss, I'm ready for something more?
You brought up a great point. The key thing is what Meredith said as well. Don't burn any bridges. It's not worth it. Everyone in the profession, if you agree or disagree with their approach, with their methods, they're still in it for the right reasons. And so at the end of the day, you're all working toward the same goal. We all just do it a little bit differently. And the sooner you can be comfortable with that or find ways to work with those individuals, then you won't burn a bridge. You'll enjoy your life and your career a lot more. One of the things that I would say, though, how I've been able to kind of move into new roles or new positions is at the universities I'm working at, I've focused on doing what is within my job scope. So that's one thing, is ensuring that I'm doing what I should be working on. And I've always kind of had the mantra that you go towards something as opposed to from something. So have I gotten every single assignment that I would like? Have I been able to work on everything that I would have preferred to work on in each admissions office? Absolutely not. But when I was given the opportunity to lead a program, to lead an initiative, even if it was something I wasn't 100% interested in, I gave it 110%. And I think that that is so telling to directors or supervisors, because they know that they can trust you. And then eventually when that opportunity does come about, it might be a couple of years later, but you might have the chance to do it because of the time and work and effort that you put into something that even they might know that you might have not enjoyed, but they had to give it to you.
They remember.
And so how you react to that. They never forget. You talk about how we always run into people. Also, people in admissions never forget. So, yeah, make the most of every opportunity.
So, Sheryl Sandberg has this interesting quote about mentorship. She says it's like the child book, Are You My Mother? And if you have to ask someone, are you my mentor, then they're probably not. How have you developed mentorships in your profession, and have they always come organically? Because I feel like higher ed is on a trend now of developing these formal mentorship programs where you're assigned someone. And I'm not sure what do you think? Do you think there's value to that, or do you think that the best, most valuable mentorships tend to be on accident almost?
I'll go ahead. Yeah, I've had some organic mentors and also some that were more formal or were assigned to me in some way, and I think there's values to both. For me, interestingly, though, I think I have been that person who's looking back. I didn't realize that maybe that person was a mentor at the time, and I valued their input, but it just didn't click for me that they were. But I realized later how much they were helping guide me or answer my questions, and that they were also providing a good example of where I wanted to be and the path that I might want to go. In terms of formal mentorships, I just recently, this past year, was a part of a program that our regional association had. It was a Leadership Development Institute. When I was first invited to it, I honestly didn't know what to expect. I didn't go in with really high hopes. I was a little down on admissions at the moment, but when I got there, it was a group of mentors who were each assigned a mentee, and they were from all different institutions, different roles. They all had different backgrounds, and they brought in a group of us who were sort of mid-level, like we were talking about earlier, maybe approaching that fork in the road of, do I continue in this? Do I try something new? And it was great. We got together 3 times as a group this past year just to talk about issues and trends and challenges we were facing and questions we were asking that maybe we didn't feel comfortable asking in our own institutions and in our own offices. Now, I really found a lot of value in that program, getting this group of people together who otherwise wouldn't all be sitting in the same room discussing these topics, and being able to bounce ideas off of each other and learn from their experiences, their advice, their mistakes, and sharing with each other. And I think it was very valuable for me. It was reinvigorating, and it also provided me with all of these wonderful contacts and people that I run into all the time that are just really and just lend any advice that I need. So I've really benefited from the formal mentorship program that I was a part of.
Yeah, I think that sometimes higher ed, it's easier in large offices to have a natural mentor, and I found that as I've gotten into smaller offices or smaller firms, it's much more difficult to find an organic mentor, and sometimes putting yourself in professional associations where a formal mentorship exists is one of the best ways to keep growing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you're absolutely right. In smaller organizations, it doesn't happen quite as naturally or maybe as quickly as you would like or as you would need. And I think that's a benefit of being in a larger organization is there's more people. There's people with different experiences and different perspectives that they can share, and it's a little bit easier to identify someone where you like kind of what they've done or where they're going, and you can seek them out and really make that mentorship happen.
Absolutely. Mike, what have your experiences been with formal and informal mentorships? Have you seen success either way?
Yeah, early on I feel like it was much more organic because you're still learning the profession. You're not really exactly sure which direction you're looking to go. So I kind of found it was beneficial, a lot like what Meredith said, kind of some people who I didn't realize were mentors, but I just kind of gravitated toward their approach, their way of looking at the profession or their job, and it just kind of developed into a mentorship. And the key thing I think about the nice thing about the organic mentorship is you don't really know where it could lead. And a lot of those organic mentors that developed have actually led to some great success for me. But I think if I had tried, kind of just like in the book, if I had said, will you be my mentor, I don't know if the same result would have happened with those individuals. But I will say through professional associations, I feel like once you've reached a point where maybe you have some internal mentors in your organization, then it's much more appropriate or acceptable to kind of ask others their perspective or their insight, because you get to a point where it's valuable to hear what they have to say, or at those different like middle manager workshops or things that are run by the different associations. You learn from others who are at the same position you are. And I think that's also nice too, because suddenly you have peers who can be mentors. And early on, you're looking more at those senior level people. But I think then once you actually move up a few positions, you start to look at peers in addition to that. And that's where it makes a little more sense to ask, because you're not working in the same office. And so you do kind of have to initiate that type of conversation.
Put yourself out there.
I found success. Exactly. And at that point, I think because of your familiarity with the position or different universities, it's easier than just saying, will you tell me how you do this? You can actually say, I'm aware that, this is the way that you read files, or that you've been recruiting for this many years in this place. Can you tell me a little bit about how you decided on that, what the goals are? You can have a much more educated conversation as opposed to kind of a broad stroke, like just tell me about this.
Yeah.
And it's a little more two-way street.
Yeah. Less begging.
Yes, exactly. More collaborating.
Exactly.
Don't beg, collaborate.
Exactly. Sticking on the theme of, I feel as if there's a growing theme about just putting yourself out there, whether it's for promotions or opportunities. What are some professional development activities a young professional can do in higher ed? Things that you've heard of and done personally, or things that maybe somebody else in your office have done or you would like to do? If I'm 1 or 2 years into the field and I really am loving it but don't know how to grow, what professional development would you tell them to do? Meredith, you want to start?
Yeah, I think that the regional associations and the national as well, I feel like those are really valuable, and there's a lot of opportunities to get involved no matter what your experience in the field is, or even what you're hoping to learn. I've recently joined one of the committees, a communications committee actually, for our regional association. I've continued to blog, but it's been really great getting to connect with other people in this field who work at other institutions, but coming together and being able to share ideas and learn from each other. So I think going to regional conferences, joining the associations, joining committees, things like that, it helps you not only get connected and network with other people, but you might also get to learn something and start to build up your resume a little bit and also make those connections that might help you in the future down the road if you are looking for a promotion or a new opportunity. So the regional associations have really, I think they're very valuable.
You know, Meredith, I saw your most recent blog on Wack. It's amazing. It is rhymed for Christmas. So I'm going to tweet it out right now if anyone wants to enjoy a little Christmas blog.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The holiday spirit.
The holiday spirit. Mike, what sort of opportunities have you taken advantage of or heard of that you would recommend?
A few that I would recommend is I completely agree with the regional association route. I think that's invaluable. But I would also recommend if you're at a college or university looking at opportunities within the university. Most of the human resources offices or leadership centers on campus will offer courses or leadership training or different areas that if you want to build your collaborative skills or things like that. I found those to be very helpful. And a great example is as I started getting into more senior roles, I realized that I really didn't know a lot about Microsoft Excel, and it's not that exciting. But one of the universities I worked for offered an Excel course for staff members. And it was one of those kind of like half-day sessions where it was like the quick things that you might know. And I have to admit, it revolutionized my ability to work with data. And then I actually attended a regional middle management seminar where the person speaking actually said that you will only survive in upper-level admissions if you know Excel in and out. And so that was something where it's not as exciting, it's not, you know, staff development per se, but it's one of those things where you're getting a great internal skill that will work to advantage you, and then if you help others gain that skill, they'll be at an advantage as well. So I think utilizing what universities have or what you could find kind of on campus, even not just through HR, but through if there's a grad school that offers courses in areas like organizational leadership or higher ed courses, even if you're not getting the degree, there's so much value in those as well. So that could be worthwhile.
Mike, I feel like this must have been your fork on the road when you were really excited about Excel data. That might have been that might have been the point when you knew that you were going to keep climbing the ladder.
I'll tell you, want to talk about one of those fork in the roads or realization moments is when someone looks at you and goes, "Well, you like data," and you're kind of like, am I really projecting that? Is that what I had no idea that's what I was projecting. So
it's a compliment. It's a compliment.
It's one you never expect to get.
It's your personality reflected back at you.
That's right.
So as we're coming to the end of our show, one of the really key points I wanted to ask about is, going back to the very first question I asked, how did you fall into your role? I feel like so many people fall into it on accident, and we're lucky to have so many great people fall into it. But how can higher ed develop a stronger pipeline of professionals? How can we get, you know, more of the best and brightest wanting to go into this profession or into your office? Meredith, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that having formal mentor programs, I think that is something that would benefit new professionals and also attracting people. Just from my own experience this past year with the formal mentor program, I came back to my office, like I said, reinvigorated and just really excited and even more passionate than I had been in the past. And as I was sharing my experience with some of my colleagues who were kind of at the same point in their career as me, I saw a difference. And I honestly, I recommended that they take advantage of something like that that would really help them kind of make those connections and help make informed decisions of where to go next. So I think that's one way. And similarly, I know for a lot of college new admission officers, there's things like rookie camp where you're sent off for a few days and you meet up with a group of incoming admission officers at different organizations, different colleges and universities, and it's sort of like a boot camp. You are exposed to some of the different topics and challenges that might be coming up, and it's a great way to learn what's coming and what a great community and network this is. So I think having those opportunities for people to get exposure to other institutions, learning from each other, and also being able to meet other people in the field, that's what keeps you going, and it provides you with people that you can lean on and go to at different points in your career.
Agreed. I did a rookie camp, and it really opened my eyes.
Love those rookie camps.
Mike, how do you think we can best kind of develop that pipeline and keep more people in higher ed?
I think a lot of people who work in admissions offices started, like you said, kind of entered the profession in a roundabout way and worked their way up. And I think nowadays, with kind of the opportunities available, the connections made nationwide, it's easier for people to move and jump to different jobs. And I think that if offices put a little more time and effort into having a robust training, onboarding, and then staff development program, you will actually retain that great talent so that you're getting the most out of those people, you're putting together the strong team, and you're able to accomplish a lot of what we talked about you can't do in 1 year. Kind of building that social networking presence, building that communication effort, managing territories, understanding the complex nature of high schools and China one day and then suddenly you're focused on North Dakota the next. You have to build that type of expertise. And it doesn't happen sometimes organically, but putting the resources in place and ensuring that over the course, rookie camp is so important, but then it's the day after you return from rookie camp. Are you still viewed as a rookie or an expert? How do you view yourself? Are you provided, as a senior member, am I providing the tools for those staff members to grow and develop both while they're on campus and when they're having the opportunity to go to conferences or different professional development sessions? I think that's where we really need to move, and I think it's a big step forward for the admissions profession to actually think more about training, development, and onboarding. I think it'll keep people in the profession longer.
Great, thanks. Well, I'll tell you that I think leading up to the holidays, we had an active back channel on #HigherEdLive. Not a lot of questions, but a lot of people sending out Mike Drish love. A lot of people sending out admissions love. One burned Brussels sprout dinner. So we're keeping it interesting here on Higher Ed Live.
Well, Meredith's going to have a bunch of people reading her blog. Those page views are just going to spike.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. If you out there want to contact Meredith, her blog is, I just tweeted out, so I'm at Kylie S. Larson. You can find Meredith's blog, or you can tweet at me, and I'll get you in contact with her. Mike is at Mike Drish. And thank you guys for a great show. Higher Ed Live will be taking a break for the holidays. Join us again on Thursday, January 9th, as we kick off our 2014 season. We've got some more high-quality professional development and dialogue coming in 2014. So I'll tweet out a link to our 2014 news, and you can find it there. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kylie.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.